Come on, Livingston, we're gonna go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We're gonna go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across. It's turned in. It's Pittman who's got it. Livingston leads.
Road is long.
Now can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead.
Man, score.
If we march to
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates. And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We're gonna go.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football. My name is Angus and today I'm joined only by Ewan. How are you doing, Ewan?
I'm good, mate. Good, mate. I would much rather be watching us playing a Scottish Cup tie this weekend, but it is what it is. It's clear to see that Andy and Bruni think the season's already finished. You know, Andy kept talking about our season being over. He clearly thinks it is, not turning up for the podcast again in quick succession. And then Bruni, well, I mean, Bruni's part-time these days anyway, but me and you will dig into the defeat during the week, I'm sure.
Aye, for Andy, we can only assume that maybe he's just chucked the league or he's probably dying from one of his 5k runs that he's been doing. Obviously, we talked about that last week. Make sure to check our links to see how you can be a part of that. And Callum's probably just pretending he's knee-deep in a dissertation right now. But yeah, just the two of us, plenty to talk about still. But listen to this episode and all other episodes on your preferred podcast streaming site. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube, plus loads more. So just search Talk Livi. Follow us and subscribe if you can so you won't miss another episode. On this episode, we're going to talk about that disappointing defeat at Easter Road during the week. We're also going to discuss the club's Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year contenders, as well as finally previewing our penultimate home game of the season against Aberdeen.
It was a slow start from the Lions. It was to prove pivotal as Hibs secured European football on Wednesday night. Despite an improved second half display, the Lions fell to a 2-1 defeat at Easter Road. Angus, what do you think went wrong on the night?
I mean, regarding that first half, I don't think you'd be very far off saying absolutely everything. That first half was an absolute shambles. I wouldn't say, I think Andy kind of talked about it in the chat during the week that he said that it looked as if the players were down tools. I just think we were far off it. I just didn't think we were at the races at all. I don't think we were set up correct. And we were just completely awful in all honesty. And to be fair to Hibs, they were good in the first half. And I think that's typified by the first goal that they scored. I think they did show good enough quality, especially on that right-hand side with Martin Boyle. He was relishing that opportunity to go down against a solo, an unprotected fullback every time. And we got the first goal. Hibs got the first goal by Paul McGinn picking him out superbly, and he had the great intelligence to cut it back to Nisbet. Us conceding goals from that area, it was something that haunted us against Hibs earlier in the season, and it's came back to do it again. Then Boyle would prove to be the architect for the second goal as well. He goes down the right-hand side, beats a couple of players, and then he goes into a 50-50 with Effie Ambrose, gets the touch away, maybe makes most of the kind of the foul, but in that kind of moment, it's going to be hard for the referee to not give a penalty. He ends up stepping up and slots it away. And yeah, you look at that first half, and we're probably lucky to only be kind of 2-0 down. I don't think Hibs were properly barraging the goal, but they were in complete and utter dominance in the entire match. And saying that, I'll give credit to Jet. I think Jet was the kind of shining light in this kind of fixture for us. A good couple of touches, getting on the ball, holding off defenders very well. But it's just unfortunate that it was only basically one out of the 10 outfield players who was kind of producing that level of performance. The second half, it did seem to be a different kind of task, as you mentioned it. But I think that's mainly down to the fact that Hibs, sat off and wanted to control the game and see it out rather than, continue on. Which, to be honest, I'm a bit surprised. I didn't think Hibs would come out of it satisfied with that 2 goals. I think that they should have been looking at that first half and going, oh, this could be like a chance to send out a real statement. We could get a bumper score here or something to make the fans happy with. But no, they did just look to kind of see the game out. I don't know if they were wary of us potentially being able to spring a counter attack on them like we've done so often. But in all honesty, we didn't look like getting anything from it. We were awarded a penalty late on. Emmanuel Thomas wins it and finishes it delightfully as well. But if we'd got anything from this game, Ewan, it would have been a travesty and totally unearned. So no complaints from me regarding this result. Hopefully we're much better coming against Aberdeen.
Yeah, got to kind of echo what you say. I thought the first half performance, it was, I'll try and sugarcoat it a wee bit, but it was exceptionally poor. I think we were well off the pace. I think we stood off Hibs far too much, and we spoke about it in the preview that if you get in Hibs' faces, if you try and upset them, that's where you can get your joy against them, because they don't enjoy that scrappy side of the game the way that we do. And we didn't do that. We sat off them far too much. And I know you said it's good. It is well worked for the first goal, but again, it comes about because we stand off them so much. McGinn's allowed to take 3-4 touches, get turned, and then roll Boyle, and Jacko and Effie are both on their heels, standing far too square. Jacko, out of position, I would say, as well. And it's a tap in for Nisbet. And the second goal, I mean, if there's minimal contact in the box, Boyle will go down. I do think it probably was a penalty, but it is theatrical, and he's tucked it away. And Max has had to pull off a couple of saves first half from Nisbet as well to keep the score down, in my opinion. And I think, in fairness to Davy, he admitted they got it wrong first half. Jacko was obviously struggling. These are things that you find out after the game and you sit and go, oh, why did he do that? But you don't question it beforehand, so it's, everyone in hindsight going, why didn't he start Jack McMillan? Well, Jack's barely kicked the ball all season. So, you don't know how fit Jack is at the same time. But I think it was a really poor first half, and it was, as you say, it seemed like we just weren't at the races at all, and it was very un-Livi-like. Second half, we changed the shape and went to a flat back 4, and I think that's where you see Jack McMillan's strength, in my opinion. Is he was talking about, Davey was talking about trying to do a job on Boyle. Well, for me, out of the fullbacks that we've got at the club, if there's a fullback that you want to do a job, Jack McMillan's the best that we've got by a long stretch, in my opinion, in terms of doing a defensive job and keeping someone quiet. And I think Boyle posed much less of a threat in the second half as a result of that. I agree with you. I think Hibs sat off us a bit and allowed us to have the ball second half. I do think we were much better second half, but it wasn't hard to improve on that first half performance. And I do think, you talked about Hibs going for the kill, going for a third and a fourth. I think that's the difference with Hibs under Jack Ross, is that I think he's more streetwise, and I think Hibs has become more streetwise, and they've realised we don't need to go gun-ho against them. If we sit in, we can frustrate them, and they need to break us down, type thing. I think we had a couple of really good chances to get back in the game before we did. I think Poplatnik's missed a great chance that Devlin's fired the ball across. I think he should be tucking that away. And Alan Forrest, I think he must hit the target with the opportunity he had. And it might have given us a bit more time to try and get something from the game. But, got the penalty. But, we could have conceded another couple on the break when we were really pushing for it. Nisbet had a couple of good opportunities again. Max has pulled off a decent save. But as you said, we deserved nothing from the game. The only highlight, and I kind of mentioned it after the game, was Jet. I thought Jet was exceptional, to be honest. And I think it's an absolute shame we maybe didn't have reserve football at the start of the season, which we could have used to get Jet up to speed without having to play in the first team, because I think you're starting to see the best of him these last month or so. And it's a shame that it looks like he's going to be moving on from the club, because I think if you get Jet in this sort of form, what an asset he could be going forward. But we deserve nothing from the game, but the first half performance was an absolute killer in terms of getting the result on Wednesday.
Yeah, regarding Jet, it's just incredible now just seeing like these kind of last couple of games, just the way that he's able to take the ball into his feet, and even though there's like 2 or 3 players crowding him, he just bounces off them, and he's got like that wee extra couple of yards of pace now that he can get away from them and create spaces and that, and it is making all the difference. And yeah, it is a shame that it's coming four games left or something, 4 or 3 games left of the season, and it's probably all we're going to see of him in a Livingston shirt. But fair play to the guys, put a lot of work in, and obviously he's had a fair bit of criticism because of obviously he's came back from not playing for quite a while. But now we really are seeing what he's capable of, and all the best to him if he does move on, because he has shown that he will put the yards in. But yeah, for us as well, like going back to the kind of point about Martin Boyle, and you're spot on about how the fact that we've made it easy for them and how we've not got in their faces every time that we've played them since we've came up from the championship. All we've done is get in their faces, and how successful has it been? You look at the last 2 kind of couple of games that we've played Hibs as well in like the league. Martin Boyle, he's played kind of mainly as like a kind of a right wing back, and with us having a left winger and a left back in that side, it kind of nullifies him because he's obviously got a defensive job to do, and he has to obviously be wary of us exploiting that space in behind him. For this game just there, though, we made it easy for them. It was vice versa. He was playing further up and he had Paul McGinn behind him, and we put one person out there to do the 2 of them. So he never had that kind of fear of ever having to go back, and he also had that option at every time as well. And I think that as well is what we've really screwed up there, especially as you mentioned as well, Jackson Longridge wasn't fit. So we put an unfit player against one of the best players in the league, who's going to be doubling up on it all the time. Yeah, you look back on it now, and it's scandalous, really. It's a very, very poor decision. But as you say, Davies taking that one on the chin. He's mentioned that he'll need to get things better, and he got it wrong. But yeah, fair enough. We'll just see how it goes the next time. But just try to think of anything else kind of positive in this game, and it's not really coming up. Maybe the fact that we did manage to keep it down to 2 goals, and we kept ourselves in the match for so long, shows a wee bit of resiliency. Obviously, in goals, Striek probably deserves a bit of credit as well because of how he did keep the score down, especially late on. I mean, you talked about those 2 chances. If Nisbet knocks either one of them away, the score looks more reflective of what the game was actually like. So yeah, credit to Max there as well. But
what would have been even worse is it would have meant Andy got 3 points in the prediction league. Had Nisbet tucked one of those away. So cheers, Max. Much appreciated on that front. Do you think Davey occasionally maybe overthinks things? Because I put it in the group chat. I think when we had the 14-game unbeaten run, I always said that Davey used to make tactical tweaks that changed the game in our favour. And even going before games, and it was all about trying to hurt the opposition team. Whilst I think ever since that St Johnstone defeat, the league game, I feel he's almost become too cautious now, and he's always thinking about how to stop teams rather than try to affect them. Do you think that's maybe a little something that Davey could pick up on going forward?
yeah, I would have to agree with you. In games, obviously, if you're playing Celtic or Rangers, that's probably going to be the way you're going to line up, because obviously you look at the players that they've got. But as you mentioned, the St Johnstone one, and then obviously kind of like here, it is quite strange for us to like obviously just be keeping on like worrying about what other teams have got. We've already been trying to compete with them on our day, and with the right kind of changes that we can properly punish them. Hopefully it is something that maybe is just coming with learning the kind of the trade of being like a full-time manager, and hopefully they'll kind of get ironed out. But yeah, as you say, it is becoming a wee bit negative that we're lining up to teams, and what that does as well for us is that it creates like a kind of a lack of cohesion. If you keep on switching up every kind of like so often, there's not really going to be that kind of momentum building, especially the results that keep on popping. I don't know if maybe that's something that's giving them is making them think that he needs to change more, is because like the results haven't been great in the last kind of like 9-10 games. But yeah, I do have to agree with you. But hopefully this is something, he's still a very young manager, still very inexperienced in the game, raw, and hopefully can kind of level it back a wee bit and focus on what we do best. Because if you look at that Hibs game there, it doesn't scream Livingston. we should be doing a lot better than that. We should be prepared a lot better than that. And the mentality should be a lot better than that as well. I know Easter Road's a tough place to go away from home, but is that not the first time we've been beat by Hibs in the league, Easter Road, since we've came up? That's the best part. That's what, 3 seasons worth of fixtures. You're probably talking maybe at least 5 or 6 games in that run. So, yeah, disappointing to have that. But as we say, we've got to take it on the chin and bounce on again.
I think the thing I'll say in Davies' defence is Davies admitted he's got it wrong. Which I think, there's a lot of managers that wouldn't have the balls to come out and just say, look, I got it wrong. It's, pin the blame on me type thing. They would go and stick it straight on the players, right from the off. So in fairness to Davies, he's come out and said himself he got it wrong tactically. And as you say, he's new in management. And I think Davey, I remember when Gary Holt left and he talked about maybe doing too much to try and change your luck around a little bit. And I feel that's maybe the case, because it's 1 in 12, I think, now. So, you maybe do a little bit too much to try and get momentum going again. But look, at the end of the day, we've still got an opportunity to finish 5th in the league. 3 games to go. St Johnstone are on our tails, so it's going to be difficult to see that out. But we'll come on to our next fixture, which is Aberdeen at home later on the podcast.
With the end of an eventual season fast approaching, we thought it would be a good time to discuss the contenders for the Player of the Year awards. Ewan, we'll start with the Player of the Year award, the big one. Who are you backing for this?
Well, I was having a think about it earlier in the week, and the way I was trying to look at that is take out the 14, the unbeaten run, right? And look at players who have still impressed me when we've not been maybe at our best and have still really stuck out and still been really consistent. And I think, no bias at all because we sponsor them, but I think one of the players we've raved about all season is Nicky Devlin. I think, Nicky had a tough first season with the injury that he had, the best part of 4 or 5 months out, and I think he managed to get back in for the St Johnstone game, which was the last game before we went into lockdown. So, but I think Nicky's been pivotal to the way we've played this season. I think, looking back at some of the right backs we've had, he's by far the best right back we've had since Dave Mackay, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think he rivals, he gets close to David McNamee as well in terms of the attacking threat that he offers going forward. It's not often you get excited when a full back gets on the ball, and that's the way I feel with Nicky. I feel like something's going to happen when you see him bombing forward. I think over kind of 15 yards, I don't think there's many folk that would be able to take Nicky for pace in the league. And we've talked about it. We think he's maybe on the fringes of a Scotland call-up. It might not happen, this year, certainly for the Euros. But I think in my opinion, he's one of the best players in that position in the league this season. And I think it's even more exceptional considering the time he spent out last year. And yeah, granted, he occasionally has a wee lapse in concentration, at the back. But I think when you have a fullback that's as attack-minded as Nicky is, that's kind of the give and take that you have with it. But for me, I think even when we've not been in the best of form, I think Nicky's a player that's always shone. And for me, he would be my player of the year.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way to look at it, because you look at that kind of 14-game unbeaten run, that doesn't paint the picture for the whole season. And as a season as a whole, it's a very strange one in that matter, because you look at the games after that 14-game unbeaten run, we've won, 1 in 10 or something like that, 1 in 11 perhaps now. And then before that as well, we were not in the best of form either during Gary Holt's kind of tenure. So looking at that kind of way, it is kind of like, without the kind of 14 games, you're looking at that and thinking who have been the kind of standouts. And yeah, Devlin's one for me as well. The other one, I think there's 2 others who I would think would stand out. One of them would be Craig Sibbald, but the one that I would go for would be John Guthrie, who I think is just, always solid. You always know what you're going to expect from him. I think that perhaps our defence hasn't been the best this season, which may seem quite rich now that we're talking about two defenders as being like our Player of the Year kind of candidates, but I don't necessarily think you can put an awful lot of blame at the feet of John Guthrie. Obviously, there's been a few mistakes kind of lately. The one against Aberdeen there, where they're kind of swinging the leg out. But for me, Guthrie's probably our most consistent player, and I think the one who's always going to give you something. He's always going to stand out. The way that he attacks the ball, the way that he comes out and intercepts, it's tremendous. It's up with the best defenders in the league, I would say. And yeah, he's just got a real good bit of quality on the ball as well. As you say, he's comes during like the kind of down periods as well. I believe that he kind of popped up with some kind of crucial goals as well. I mean, there was an equaliser at Dundee United. There was a winner against Ross County earlier in the season as well. So he adds that aspect to his game as well, which is great for a centre half. And for me, yeah, I think for Player of the Year, it's probably going to be down between the two players that we've picked, Guthrie and Devlin. I don't think anybody's kind of really coming close to that. I would maybe say you could make a shout for Sibbald, probably even Pittman, and also probably Jason Holt, Bartley. But I think it's kind of a difficult one because you look at most of our attacking players and there's not really been a consistent kind of player there, is there? I mean, you look at even Alan Forrest and Josh Mullen, there's been extended periods of the time where they've been out. Obviously, Scott Robinson had a real hot streak of form, and then obviously, you know what happened. J. Emmanuel Thomas has been in now and he's been great, but there's not been anybody on that end of the pitch who's had that consistent run of games that you can probably put them forward for that award. But is there anybody else I've not mentioned who you think is a worthy contender?
I know you have mentioned Craig Sibbald, but I think you kind of scutted over him a little bit. And again, I kind of took the impression that I did with Nicky and players that have stood out kind of over the full season. And I think Sibs is another one. It wasn't that long ago that we were talking about Sibbald leaving, because he wasn't featuring in the side. And I think ever since he broke into the team and started playing a little bit deeper, because historically when he played at Falkirk, he always played in behind the striker as a number 10 and created. And I think Sibs dropped a little bit deeper. And with him and Bartley, when they've played there, I think it allows Bartley to go and do what he's good at, go and roam and kind of stop attacks across the park. And Sibs is the one that kind of builds everything and it gets played through him. And I think, you've seen other aspects to Sibs' game where he's been put into the right-hand side and he's allowed to get the best out of Nicky again. I think Sibs has been fantastic this year. And, I'd be looking to try and tie him down on another extended deal personally. I know he's got another year left after he signed an extension, but it just shows you how football can change because, as I say, he was one that looked like he was going to be leaving the club around about November time last season. And I think he's flourished this year, even when we've not been quite at our best. Again, you touched on Scott Robinson. I mean, he did win a Player of the Month award. I know, obviously, the relationship with Robbo's a bit strained just now, is the best way I could probably put it with him in the club. But, at the end of the day, he was, especially in that 14 and that unbeaten run, Robbo, I thought, was exceptional. And, for someone that's not an out-and-out striker, to have led the line as well as he was, I think that says a lot for him. I think another one that you've maybe not mentioned is Max. I think, it's been a very contentious position all season with Livingston fans, to say the least. We won't dive too much into that, but I think Max is, he's come up from non-league football down south, and I think he's been very, very consistent, very solid. I think that's almost a good quality with a goalkeeper, that you don't need to talk about him that often. In my eyes, I don't think he does anything spectacular as such, but I think he's just very consistent and very steady, and I think that's underrated in a goalkeeper at times. And I think he has had a very good first season at the club, and obviously with Robbie probably going back to Rangers next year, I think he's certainly done enough to cement the number 1 jersey. In terms of Young Player of the Year, it's a wee bit more difficult. I think what qualifies is under 23 at the start of the season. My instant thought was Julian Serrano. for Young Player of the Year in terms of a player that's made a real impact on the team. What do you think on that one?
Yeah, I completely agree. I really like Julian Serrano. I think he's a very intuitive left back, likes to bomb up, and he's not bad defensively either. As you said, we've not really got a big pool of young players to kind of pick from. We've got Serrano, Robbie McCrory. Does Jack Fitzwater count? Was he 23 before the season started?
Yeah, I think Jack maybe just makes the cut as well.
Other than that, I'm kind of struggling to think of anybody else kind of being in that bracket.
The only other one I would say, and he's only played a handful of games, but in terms of what he's done at other clubs this season, is Jack Hamilton.
Yeah.
I think he is a Livingston player, but I don't think he constitutes the Young Player of the Year in terms of Livingston. But yeah, I think Serrano's almost a nailed-on one. I think I think he was very consistent at left back, as you say. I thought he was a decent enough defender. Surprisingly hard tackling as well. For a player that plays on the continent, and he was very good getting up and down the line as well, and he offered a bit of quality. I think I can't really see anyone beating Julian to that. The other one I was going to chat about was goal of the season. If there's a goal that just instantly sticks out in your mind, what would you say is our goal of the season?
Straight away, you've got J. Emmanuel Thomas's against Hamilton. Which is, of course, an absolutely tremendous bit of skill. Probably will be unmatched in terms of that. However, I think that's going to be the obvious answer for everybody, and I'm going to be a wee bit of a contrarian here and just go for something a wee bit different. And just for the kind of pure emotion I kind of felt at that moment, and even the quality of the goal as well, I'd say Scott Robinson's winner at Rugby Park. Last minute of the game, we're obviously one each. We came back from conceding a penalty. Jason Holt headers the ball back in. Robinson just instinctively dinks it over the keeper, and then the scenes after it, I mean, it was absolutely incredible. Just everybody, running to be together, and it was one of the moments of this season that you're looking at and being like, oh, we wish we were there. We wish we were in that stadium at that very moment, and it would have been absolutely pandemonium. And yeah, for me, I think that may kind of go under the radar a wee bit because obviously Emmanuel Thomas's goal, which, to be fair, is an absolute cracker, and there's no taking away from that. But for me, that's one as well that deserve a lot of credit.
Yeah, they were two that instantly sprung to mind in terms of one, the technique for both, I think, is outrageous, actually. But as you say, Robbo's one was just that there's nothing better than a last minute winner. Like, there's literally nothing better than a last minute winner. But that's where there was another goal that sprung to mind, and it's not for the technique or anything. It was actually Alan Forrest's goal at Dundee United, because I thought it was so poetically Livy. The chasing down the lost cause from Poplatnik, and then Poplatnik goes and squares it, and you're instantly looking towards the line going, is Al on? But that ended a very long-awaited a long wait for an away victory in the league, that goal. But in terms of quality of the strikes, the two you mentioned, another one I really enjoyed was Scott Pittman's against Dundee United at home. Thought that was an incredibly well worked goal as well, from Poplatnik's little flick on and then pitch driving forward from the middle of the park. Great finish as well. That was another one that instantly sprung to mind for me. But
Speaking of Young Player of the Year, possibly for Julian Serrano, can't forget his strike against Celtic.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones. They always get overlooked, those ones, don't they? Because it never resulted in anything.
Yeah.
But I remember that going in. I was like, what are you doing, Julian? And then he goes and pings it right in the top bin.
Yeah, although it was a consolation, it's an absolute cracker of a goal at Celtic Park and everything. It's now on the opening intro for A View from the Terrace and everything. It is an unbelievable goal, and yeah, now thinking of that, if you're talking about it in terms of like pure goals, scoring it at Celtic Park against Celtic as well really adds to the kind of quality. I know that Celtic haven't been great this season, but this one for the highlight reel for sure. But now we're kind of talking about it, there's plenty of them kind of coming to mind. There's a couple from Alan Forrest as well in the cups that I think it was against Stenhouse Muir, cuts in and swings it into the top corner and that. So yeah, it's going to be actually quite a difficult one to decide on, and I'm interested to see what the supporters end up settling on. There'll obviously be a lot of contention, but if you put it to me right now, I'd probably say that Jets goal against Hamilton will be the favourite.
Yeah, as you say, there's more and more goals just keep popping to mind, actually, when you talk about it. Josh Mullins at Easter Road, I really liked that goal as well. Again, it was really well worked. Just that one sprung to mind just there. But as you say, I mean, there's plenty of decent goals throughout the season. What, and at the end of the day, will prove a fairly successful season for the club. But tell you what, listeners, feel free to get in touch after you've listened to the episode. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know what goals stick out for you over the season. And obviously, the club will be doing awards at the end of the season, I'm sure, so you'll be able to get your chance to vote anyway. The Lions face another game against Stephen Glass's Dons as they travel to the Spaghetti Had. Angus, how do you see this one going? that noise, we don't need anything else. That noise says it all.
I have no idea, in all honesty. Who knows what we're going to do? Because you look at that performance up at Pittodrie, and I thought we were very good for most parts of it. I think we tired out of it. Maybe that's had an impact on our performance during the week there, but if we show up against Aberdeen like we did against Hibs, then we're going to get beat as well. I mean, Aberdeen had a very good performance against Celtic just during the week there. Drew one each, but they probably should have had a good couple of goals. I think Lewis Ferguson, he did score, but he probably could have ended up on that night with having a hat-trick. Aberdeen do look to seem to have that bit of confidence back between them. They're playing with a bit more attacking flair. They're passing the ball about very nicely. I think in that first game with us, it was kind of like a teething kind of period to kind of get used to the manager's kind of new ideas and that. And I think you can already see that there is an improvement in them. I don't think they're nearly as negative as they have been throughout most of the season. But yeah, it's a strange one because the way they've been playing against Aberdeen this season, we've been very competitive against them. We just need to get the game plan right, essentially. And, what we didn't do against Hibs in that first half, we need to do against Aberdeen. We need to be in their faces. We need to not give them any time, because I also believe that, Aberdeen are still getting used to this system of playing total football, essentially, bringing the ball out from the back every time. If you put pressure on these types of players like Considine and Hoban, there can be mistakes in there. I mean, you've seen it last game with Hoban against the wee Alan Forest. How many times he was, instead of doing what his instincts are telling him to just hoof it, he's trying to play the ball out, and then we ended up capitalising and he ended up getting booked from it. So, yeah, as long as we kind of do that, winning with a chance, but at the same time, that performance there may be a wee bit worrying coming into this one, but we'll be confident, and hopefully, this period of not having a game today will give the players a good breathing kind of time, a good rest, and we can work on things to go and punish Aberdeen and take the game to them.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on the game plan up at Aberdeen, and had we played a fraction like we did up at Pittodrie in terms of our pressing game and everything like that, I think we would have been well in with a chance of getting a result at Easter Road. I think, as much as we were critical of Davy for the tactics against Hibs, I think he got his tactics almost spot on against Aberdeen in terms of allowing Considine and Hoban the ball, allowing them to try and play out. And then as soon as it was coming into the middle third or out wide, and the more dangerous players that Aberdeen have, that's when you go and press them. And I think we executed the game plan really well across the 120 minutes that we played up at Pittodrie. I think, as you say, the whole new manager bounce, they managed to get a couple of goals against us. But to be honest, I wasn't concerned in the cup tie with Aberdeen until they equalised. I think it's the first, they opened us up a couple of times in the first half, but I wouldn't have said it was this total football aspect. I've only seen the highlights against Celtic during the week, but by all accounts, they did look very good against Celtic and were very unlucky not to come away with all 3 points. But I mean, I was just having a glance at the league table there, and there's 6 points in it between them and Hibs. Aberdeen do still need to play Hibs. It's unrealistic they'll catch them, but I think if you're Aberdeen, you need to say that you're trying to chase Hibs down. So if they're going to do that, they have to come and beat us. And it's that old cliche: do they have more to play for than we do? At this time of the season. But look, it's going to be a difficult game. All the games since we've got promoted with Aberdeen have been very close. There's only, I think, only once has there been more than one goal in it, and that game was a travesty result, the 2-0 that they took against us last season at Livi. So I don't expect much different. I expect a really close game, but you can see that there are differences in the way that Aberdeen are playing since Stephen Glass has come in. I think they are trying to be a bit more forward thinking.
I think one thing that Aberdeen players, officials, fans will be happy about is that there probably shouldn't be any hassle of getting the game on this time. Obviously, the debacle during the winter time with the snow, the heavy snow that, to be honest, we just didn't do good enough to just make vanish instantly. That's on us, but thankfully, guys, like if there's any Aberdeen fans that are listening, we've handled it. We've learned from our mistakes, and everything should be all good for this Saturday. Hopefully, I've just jinxed that now, and we get an absolute blizzard coming towards that. But
I guess what you need to remember is Aberdeen fans are the windiest fans in the country, right? Regardless if it's 20 degrees, absolutely glorious, they'll find something to moan about, and more than likely it's going to be the pay-per-view price, because that was the biggest travesty about it all for us, was the fact that game got called off twice, and 3 times we had to advertise the £20 pay-per-view for Aberdeen, because they were, out of all the fans this season, they have by far and away topped it as the whingiest bunch about the pay-per-view.
But just moving on from that, what do you want to see from Livingston? Who do you want to see lining up? Do you want to see a return back to the usual formation, that kind of 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3 kind of style? Who comes in? Anybody you want to see given a run out, or are you expecting very much the same as probably the team that lined up against them just over a week ago?
Yeah, I fully expect that we'll go back to a back four. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because I know Davey mentioned a few issues. He mentioned Jack Fitzwater was struggling. It was his calf, I think he mentioned, with that. Obviously, Jack always mentions kind of on painkillers as well. Diani's it's Ramadan, so he's struggling to kind of train or certainly kind of get the correct nutrition at this time of the season. So, how much we would see of him, for example. I think Marv will come back in. I think the only reason Marv sat out against Hibs was because he covered about 15k in the cup tie against Aberdeen. So, at Marv's age, it's obviously going to be quite difficult to play another game during the week so soon. So, I think Marvin will come back in. I think it's, with Jacko maybe having some issues, I think it's a good opportunity to get Jack McMillan minutes. We're massive fans of Jack on the podcast, so I would like to see him come in. Alan Lithgow is another one. I think, if Fitzwater's struggling, I think Al try and win another contract. I think the way it's looking, it looks like Effie will probably move on. So I think he'll give Al maybe another opportunity to get minutes under his belt. In terms of more in the forward areas, I'd like to see the lad Kabaya get a run out. As I say, it's maybe that, I kind of mentioned it before the Hibs game, but we maybe need that youthful exuberance in the team just to kind of liven things up again. He has that little bit of unpredictability about him, and I'd like to see him get a few more minutes before the tail end of the season. But I think we've obviously, over the course of the season, it's caught up with us a little bit. I think coming into these last few games, and there are a few wee niggles kicking about the squad, so it'll be interesting to see what David does for sure.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you. I think we've basically, at this kind of stage of the season, we're just kind of looking on to the next. And yeah, the likes of Alan Lithgow, is he still got it to be a player at this level? Even the likes of Diani and that, I know obviously certain other circumstances may come into play. Get him more minutes in this league, get him more used to it, so he's not playing catch up at the start of pre-season straight away. Kabaya as well, would like to see more of him. But yeah, for me as well, I always go on about it. I would just like to see us play with, actual wingers on either side. I don't think that's been something that we've exploited frequently enough, considering the options that we have as well.
Tell you what, Angus, if we did a bingo scorecard, that's a nailed on one every podcast.
I need to keep on having it. I don't think I'm the only one, to be fair. I think it's just because we look at those options that we have. We've now got Alan Forrest, Josh Mullen and Jet, who could all be on the wings at once. And the fact that we do seem to not be playing kind of two at once, I think we seem to be missing a wee bit of a trick there. And if it eventually does happen and we don't, play well with it, then I'll kind of hold my hands up. But we've got to try it, I believe, with these kind of better players that I think we have in those, natural positions. I guess that would then leave an option to being like who's going to be up front there, because I think you put Jet on the right wing again against Aberdeen, because how well it worked the first time. Do you put Forrest through the middle and then keep Sibbald out left? Then possibly so. But I wouldn't even be opposed to putting, Josh Mullen on the left wing, or as you mentioned, Kabaya. I think that would be very interesting to see, how that would operate, even if you put Forrest on the left wing and put Kabaya through the middle, just to be a nuisance, a pest essentially. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Not expecting massive changes. We'll probably see a very similar team to the team that they played them the last time out. Probably other than Jack Fitzwater and Jackson Longridge will probably be rotated for McMillan. But here's hoping that we're going and we will get another 3 points. Or it's been far too long without a win, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, we'll move on to that. What are you expecting result-wise for the game?
Yeah, although I've just said it's been too long without a win, I'm not going to predict a win. I'm not going to predict us to lose. I'm going to go for a scrappy 1-1 draw.
Yeah, you've beat me to it. I think we have quite a decent record of scoring against Aberdeen, but as do they against us. So I think a score draw. I think 1-1. Hopefully a good performance to go with it. But yeah, it's another important game in terms of trying to secure 5th place and the potential of European football for next season. So hopefully the Lions can get a positive result.
That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. Thanks again to every single one of you for tuning in week and week out. If you can, we'd love to hear your feedback. Either leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Angus said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Search Talk Livi to find us. You'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if none of those options suit you though, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode that we've done over the last few years.
That's it for this week. Thanks again for tuning in. For now, from all of us here on the official Talk Livi podcast, we hope you have a great week.
Love will never die. West Lothian, West Lothian is our battle cry. This is the place from which we hail. Livingston, oh Livingston, it's up to Amberville. Livingston, 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 oh Livingston, we love it when you score. Livingston, oh Livingston, the Amberville Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, into the